Okay. If I can bring your attention to, and turn back time here a little bit. Where were we at? Oh, right there. Okay, we're back in. Okay, right now we're gonna go to item number 4, action on the general consent calendar. At this time, if board members have any item that they want pulled off of the consent, if they would do that, and you can, then we'll approve the calendar, and then we'll have you speak to that particular item. And so if you pull a number, we just reference it from our agenda, 4.1, 4.5, whatever it is. Okay, I'm not seeing any, oh, yeah, I am. Okay, here we go. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
I move to approve the general consent calendar.
Second. No, we had some points. Okay.
We need to make an amendment.
Okay, well, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar, a second from Laura, an amendment to that motion, which could be to remove an item for separate discussion. Board member, I thought all of you guys would be ready to dive on this, so.
We were still talking legislation.
Okay. Board member Earl.
So yeah, just pulling 4.2 contracts, just to look at a couple of those.
Is there a
Item 4.2.
particular one on 4.2? Or just pull 4.2? Okay,
Yeah, yeah, just real quick. To
Okay,
kind of just hit it, just real quick. a couple of
Okay,
those.
well, we'll pull 4.2 for discussion. That's a proposed amendment. Discussion to that amendment. Do we have a second? Second. Discussion to that amendment is going to come back, but you're on this. You're going to discuss the amendment to pull. Okay.
Am I allowed to expand on her amendment with her?
You can amend the amendment.
I know that 4.3 is informational, but I would like to pull that to talk about it. And then 4.7.
Okay, the amendment to the amendment is to pull 4.3 and 4.7.
We just say if nobody objects.
You know, without objection, because we can do this, I'm just going to pull 4.2, 4.3, 4.7 from, I'm sorry, I was trying to move the meeting along. So we're going to pull 4.2, 4.3, 4.7. Is there any other, and I'm not seeing any, so let's
We always
vote on the motion to pull. So do we have a motion? I think we do. Is your motion still good to approve the consent as amended? We're going to pull 4.2, 4.3
Well, he said without objection. If there was-
without objection. Is your motion still good? To approve the consent calendar with those 3 things pulled? Is the second still good? Thank you. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Boy, we're quiet today. Those opposed? Okay. Okay. Voting's unanimous. Okay, now we're going to go to 4.2. Board Member Earl, we're opening that up. What specifically?
I know, I'm a new board member, she needs her
Oh, sorry.
I'm a newer board member, so if you don't mind, if we could just quickly walk down through these. I don't know who normally goes through these, and just do a general explanation, and if there's other questions. Would you mind, just because of the money amounts? That was some of my concerns, some of the 45 million. I'm just asking the question just real quick if someone
Okay,
could.
we've got a few questions on 4.3, so Scott, do you want to come up and whatever staff? Okay, Zach. Turn your mics on, and Board Member Earl has a few questions.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, Zachary Christensen. I'm the Director of Purchasing and Contracts for the Utah State Board of Education.
Okay. So I'm just looking down a couple of these. So Waterford Research Institute, maybe just, and perhaps all of you know, if you can walk me through what that is and what it looks like and the amount and that kind of thing.
Yes, so the contract was also attached under 4.2, and this is for the Upstart program, which is in code that we do. The contract with Waterford is set to expire at the end of June, and so under the code we have a requirement to solicit a new provider. So we issued an RFP. Waterford responded, and they were selected, and we have been negotiating the contract, and so that is how that contract came about.
Okay, so this is the negotiated contract moving forward from 2019 to 2023?
Correct.
So a 5-year contract, is that what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
4-year? Okay, and then, so just looking at the cost of, so marketing our strategic plan ran us $150,000, is that, am I reading that right, or am I misinterpreting
What's
that?
That is item number 4.
Yeah, number 4, sorry.
Correct. That was issued off of one of the approved vendor lists, which is a state cooperative contract. So that was originally issued by the Department of Administrative Services Division of Purchasing, and they had pre-qualified certain vendors. And we went forward and said we had a certain plan that we wanted to have marketed. We did a mini RFP to those vendors who were on the approved vendor list, and Penna Powers was selected to be awarded that scope of work under that state cooperative contract.
Okay, okay.
Okay, any other questions on 4.2? Board Member Ellis, do you have questions on 4.2? Okay.
4.2, so on the Waterford one, the 42 million, or 45 million, we're required by statute, but is the funding mechanism, or the funding, is that amount what is appropriated specifically? We're not above and beyond anything that's appropriated?
Correct. The funding is limited to the ongoing funding that we currently have.
Right,
So-
and this is one where we're required regardless of how we feel about it.
Correct.
Am I correct? Okay, I have some on the other, and if you want me to keep
Okay,
going.
well, we're going to do 4.2
Okay, that's fine.
right now. I'm not seeing any further discussion on 4.2. Is there a motion to approve the contracts that are under 4.2? Okay. Board Member Cannon. Second, Board Member Belknap. Any more discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting is unanimous. Okay, 4.3, this would be Board Member Ellis.
I just had a question. I know. Sorry.
It's not on the mic.
What's that? Oh, you pushed your, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, when we were on 4.2, I turned off. So I have a question on the number 1, the $11 million figure. And I apologize because last night when I was looking at these, there were no contracts attached. But it could have been, I realize now, that it's because I left here and went to another Wi-Fi source and it put me on the public system instead of on the logged-in system. So I was frustrated there was nothing attached. But I'm just wondering why we don't approve that, and what, if you could just tell me a little bit more about that Utah State University.
Correct. This is only an amendment to the already existing contract with Utah State University. So we are not actually adding any funding to it. We are only extending the termination date from June 30th, 2019 till September 30th, 2019.
Okay.
Yes, Scott?
The contract amendment is in the backups. So what we've tried to do is title these as amendments. so that when you see the tracker, right, the tracker system, but when we open up the document that speaks to the amendment.
Right, and I apologize
No,
because
no, you're
it
fine.
was, only was showing me the public content, and I thought there wasn't any
okay.
other, and
No,
I was
you're right.
frustrated that for that dollar amount, we weren't seeing more information.
Oh, I
So
see. Okay, I got you.
I apologize. I saw
No,
that after
don't-
I pulled it,
Yes, ma'am.
but thank you.
Oh, I got
Do you have more questions on 4.3?
Nope.
Okay, any board members?
So I
Si-
can move that we,
Okay. I'm seeking a motion to approve 4.3.
it's informational, it's not action.
Just information.
Just information.
Okay, but it'll stay in, so it'll just stay in our document. Okay, we don't need one, okay. 4.7, Board Member Ellis.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if Darren could come up and just give us a little bit of history on this and the 6 requirements. And then we picked number 3, and he sent me some information, but it was the wrong link, and so I haven't had a chance, because we've been in meetings, to really do this. So I'm just wondering if you could help me on those assurances and the one that we picked. And if it will come back to the board after it's filled out.
Darren Nielsen, Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning. Let me start with a little context in this. The board has instituted 2 new assessment contracts over the less than the last 12 months. One for our 3 through 8 standards assessment, and then also one for our high school assessment. And then ACT will actually come before you, hopefully this spring at some point. We also have a requirement to provide assessment services for our 1% of our students, and it's called the alternate assessment. We fund that assessment. There's actually 2 providers. There's the UOD, Utah Alternate Assessment, and then the Dynamic Learning Maps, the DLM. The DLM is for science for those students in grades 3 through 11, and then the alternate assessment is for math and language arts. The current funding, the money that we spend on that right now is $351,000, and that's split up between special education contributes $300,000 annually to that, and assessment, our federal assessment grant that we get non-competitive from the federal government every year, it pays $51,000 of that. When we went to RFP on both of those previous products, our intention was to include that vendor provide an alternate assessment. As we started to get responses from the vendors, the cost of that was outside of the budget that we had, and the contract we have with DLM extends through the spring of 2020. So we had some time. We weren't forced to select those 2 vendors to provide the alternate. So those were pulled out of both of those contracts, and we just contract with those vendors to provide the traditional assessment. So we still have this need to provide an alternate assessment. We also have a desire as staff members for USBE to have one vendor that provides those services. So our students throughout the system of 3 through 11 and our teachers who often work with students in different grade levels in these settings don't have to interact with multiple test vendors to administer these assessments. So we've got an interest in doing that on our side as well. We've begun the RFP process, so starting to write the RFP. At that same time, this award was announced, this innovative assessment grant through ESEA was announced, and we have till the end of February to issue a letter of intent to apply, and then the end of March is when we would have to have our application completed. If you authorize us to go forward and submit an intent to apply, then over the next 2 months, your staff would spend a significant amount of time writing that application. We would bring it back to the board. We'd have to bring it back to the board. And even if we got awarded, the board then has to take a formal step to authorize the acceptance of those funds. The grants can range from $1 to $4 million. We do expect that the contract that the contract we have right now to provide our alternate was on a contract we've had for a long time, and it's a consortium. And even if we were fully satisfied with that product, we expect that the cost to deliver that is going to be much higher than it was when we originally signed an agreement. And we know that because of these other parties their terms have expired and they've come back into the consortium. The cost has gone up substantially. So as we saw this funding opportunity come up, and as we know that we're working on an alternate RFP currently, we thought this might be an opportunity to leverage some fundings and also help us make advancements in delivering an innovative assessment for alternates. So let me talk about the 6 priorities that you asked about. The types of projects that the federal government will fund if states want to focus on English language learners and develop innovative assessments around that is one. The second one is if they want to look at developing and improving models to measure and assess students' progress through student growth. Our state already is engaged in student growth. We use student growth percentiles, and you're aware of that. Number 3, developing and improving assessments for children with disabilities, including the alternate assessments. So it looks like this aligns with something the Utah State Board of Education is already doing, and it looks like an opportunity for us to leverage more federal funds to help pay for a portion of that assessment. The fourth one is if states want to collaborate with institutions of higher education to develop assessments. The fifth one is measuring student academic achievement through multiple measures of assessment. And the last one focuses on using performance and technology-based academic assessments, including computer adaptive assessments. So the Utah State Board of Education, you have a computer adaptive assessment you have for the last 6 years, first grades 3 through 8. There are a lot of states that don't have computer adaptive assessments. You'll see that on there, and you might say, well, why would that be innovative? It points to the fact that Utah, in some ways, an assessment is innovative. We hope, as we work with our special education, between assessment and special education, to have a solution that we come up with through this process that is innovative and something that can lead out across the nation and being a better product for this really small portion, less than 1% of our students. And it makes it really challenging to assess their needs because their standards are different than the standards that the traditional students encounter. I'm trying to remember if I hit all of your questions. We will come back. It does have to come back to the board. Even before, if we were granted the funding, the board has to accept that at some future time. I don't know the time of when they would tell us whether we were awarded or not. I haven't ran across that yet.
Go ahead.
I have, yeah, thank you. Yes, you answered all my questions. I appreciate that a lot. So I have another question on, so you mentioned that you expect or anticipate the cost will go up when you go to do a new RFP for the test, but based on what you've seen in other states, what are we talking about? Because anytime we can handle it without playing Mother May I from the federal government, that's kind of where I stand. And so I'm just trying to see what that difference is and if we've looked at any other paths to fill that gap.
Yeah, I don't feel like I can speak to what that dollar amount's going to be. We just know that both of the RFPs, when we included the alternate in our RFP for the vendor Questar that we eventually selected for our 3 through 8 and also our high school, the 910 Pearson, it was in the millions of dollars for them to include in their assessments the alternate. Sometimes past, again, because this population of students, from a business perspective, there's not a big market. And so the vendors,
Right.
the large assessment vendors, haven't focused a lot of energy on that. Since we put those in our original RFPs and then pulled them out, we've had both Questar and Pearson interested in wanting to know, hey, we'd like to work, and I'm sure every assessment vendor would like to work on developing something. They see that there's a gap there in service. The challenge for business is that the market is such a small percentage of students that it's a challenge for them.
And is your intent to only go after the assurance number 3 with the alternate assessment or any of those? Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah,
Vice Chair Brittany.
We've got plenty to do. I'd love to attack some of these other innovative pieces, but our hands are pretty full right now.
Okay. You might want to stay there. I'm not sure what.
Okay. No, I just want to speak in favor of this opportunity. I don't look at this as a Mother May I, but it's a pot of money that's available specifically for something we would do anyways. And so it's not changing the direction that we're not going. It's not influencing our direction, but it allows us to access resources. And I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of, is accessing resources for our state. Thank you.
Any other discussion on 4.7? So at this time, it'd be appropriate to have a motion, if the board wants to approve. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
I move that we approve the grant application for assessment.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We just have the one? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that concludes our consent. We're going to have a half-hour lunch. So can we be back at our seats at 20 till and bring our A game, and we'll get through the rest of this agenda. Thank you.